Ferrari at breakfast on LBC. Call 0345 6060 973.
9 minutes before 8 is the time. Let's come away from our conversation concerning Ukraine and come back to here domestic matters. And there's nothing more important, as I say so many times, than our children. So what of plans we'll hear of today from the Prime Minister to unveil millions of pounds to help thousands of new parents cope with the challenges of family life. In a boost to family support, it's reported, Mr Sunak will talk of £300 million in funding for the rollout of what are known as family hubs across England. What is a family hub? Let's turn to Conservative MP and Minister for Children, Families and Wellbeing, Claire Coutinho, who joins me now. Thank you for coming on, Minister. What exactly does a family hub provide for, and how do you decide where they go geographically? Morning.
Morning. Thanks so much for having me. So a family hub is a one-stop shop for parenting, and what you'll find in them is lots of support around the early years. So it might be midwifery, it might be breastfeeding will be in there, parenting support, mental health support for parents and babies, because you know that can be quite a difficult time. But they also stretch all the way from 0 to 19. So what you'll see is a much wider range of services and also things which will help parents. So it might be stuff to do, again, with their mental health, it might be to do with domestic abuse, it might be to do with stopping smoking. But the whole point is that you have a one-stop shop, so families can go to a particular place where all their services will be joined up.
So, Minister, at the upper age bracket, the sort of mid-teens to late teens, what might be provided for them or their parents at the hubs?
Well, I mean, one of the things that we are sort of co-locating in these hubs, which local authorities we're working with, are things like mental health support, things like relationship support, all of those sort of wider ranges of services. But those will be based on local need. And I think that the point is that when you have all of your service in one place, it means that you as a family can go in and look at what you need, and hopefully everything will be there for you.
How will you decide, or how do your colleagues decide, where they're sited geographically?
So we've looked at three particular things. One is deprivation, because obviously we want to target the most deprived areas. And second is areas where we've got poorer education and health outcomes. And that's what we're targeting when we've picked 75 areas across the country. So that's half of all upper tier local authorities, but based on those particular three drivers.
How will we know if the money is well spent? How will we know if the hubs are working?
So we are going to do a rigorous outcomes evaluation. We're learning from different programmes in government. So, for example, the Supporting Families programme, which again has been rigorously evaluated, and you can see that children are going, they're much less likely to go into prison, much less likely to go into care. So we're looking at all of those frameworks, but we want to, as you say, make sure that we can build on the evidence, because frankly we want these to work.
How much of the £300 million is new money?
So the £300 million is all new money for family hubs, and the majority of it is going into services. So you have money for breastfeeding, money for that sort of parent-baby mental health support, and triple P parenting classes and things like that. So the majority of the money is going to be for services, but there's also money for transformation. And we've also had some extra money for things like the home learning environment outside of that £300 million to work with parents on, working with them on how to improve things that are happening at home as well.
You touched briefly on provision of mental health or emotional support. How happy are you that more broadly across, particularly for children and young people, there are reports that in some areas, some centres have been closed and there is a woeful lack of care, Minister?
So I think when it comes to mental health overall, we know the pandemic has taken a toll. We had a State of the Nation report this week, and actually there was some signs of recovery, but I think in particular areas like older teens, for example, we know that lots of people are struggling. So I think there's two things that we're doing. Firstly is rolling out help in schools. So we've been rolling out mental health support teams in schools, as well as training up about 10,000 different colleges and schools have had senior mental health leads trained up by us. But we're also working very closely with health to make sure that access to mental health services through the health offer is also improved.
OK, a couple of other stories while I have the benefit on the line. This is very much on your brief, the report that labelling children as overweight is fat-shaming and could do more harm than good. An NHS scheme that measures primary school pupils' height and weight can cause them anxiety at weigh-ins and leads to teasing, says the National Child Measurement Programme. Do you agree?
I think we've got to be quite practical about these things. I mean, we have a problem with childhood obesity, and we need to address it. We also know that children are, happier, they're healthier, they live longer when they have, healthier weight. So I think it's important that we can be very practical about these things. I mean, I come from a family where everyone works in the NHS, and I think you need to be quite sort of open and practical when you're dealing with people's health and not sort of pussyfoot around too much.
You can tell a child she is overweight.
Well, I think you've got to do these things sensitively, but I do think
I'm not saying, hey, you're overweight, but dealt with delicately. You can use the word overweight.
Well, I think you've got to be able to do these things sensitively. And I think the most important thing is that you're you're not sort of trying to ignore the issue, you're addressing whatever the issue is with that child. But we know that children are quite anxious at the moment. So, of course, we've got to make sure that we're doing all of these things in a sensitive way.
The Prevent programme seems to have failed. Again, this touches your brief because children have been groomed, whether far right or Islamist extremism, which a report suggests has rather been ignored. How is it to be put right, Minister?
Well, we have looked at all the recommendations. I think there was 34 different recommendations, and we're accepting all of them. I was listening to Suella in the House, I think it was yesterday, and I think there's been acknowledgements that some of these programmes have not gone in the right direction, and we're going to improve things like training, making it much clearer what the guidance is for, and making it clear that we're going to focus on dangerous ideology as well. All
right, just lastly, your party has a new, rather controversial deputy chairman who in the past has said that nurses who use food banks aren't budgeting correctly and you can make a meal for 30p. And he said today that he backs the return of the death penalty. Would you support him?
So I don't agree with Lee all of the time. I don't back the return of the death penalty, for example, but I do support Lee. I actually really, really like Lee. I came in the same time as him, so we're both part of the 2019 intake. I think people respond to when it comes to Lee is he does speak his mind, and I think it's really important that we have people who have lots of different opinions, and that's one of the things I like about the Conservative Party, frankly, because we are very good at living alongside each other, even when we disagree. We know that it takes a broad range of viewpoints to make up a society, and we can still get along. So I'm a big fan of Lee, and I think he's a very good thing for the party.
Okay, and indeed you did retweet his tweet saying that he was very proud. Just finally, this is someone, I remind you, who says nurses who are on food banks don't know how to budget. Nuisance tenants should live in a tent in a field and be woken up at 6 a.m. to pick potatoes. That's someone you welcome in a senior role in your party.
Yes, like I said, I don't have to agree with every single thing that Lee has said, but Lee's also someone who used to be a miner. He was a single dad for 17 years. He sold his car to feed his kids. He's got a lot of things to offer, and like I said, I am a big supporter of him.
Grateful for your time. Thank you very much. Your Minister of Children, Families and Wellbeing, Claire Coutinho, appearing here on LBC Where. At 8 o'clock, news is next.
On your radio, on Global Player, and
Play LBC.
Leading Britain's conversation. This is LBC.
From Global's newsroom at 8 o'clock, President Zelensky is heading to Brussels as he continues to push European leaders for more weapons in the fight against Russia. The Ukrainian leader made a direct appeal for fighter aircraft when he visited the UK yesterday. Rishi Sunak insists nothing is off the table. Labour's Shadow Foreign Secretary David Lammy has told Nick the request needs careful consideration.
We here in the UK largely have Typhoons and F-35s. The request is for F-16s. I think the Dutch and